Having received an inheritance of $35,000 from my late uncle, I was walking home from the attorney's office with one thought in mind: to finally bring some peace and joy back into our lives. But as I approached the door, I overheard my husband talking with his female cousin. What I heard made my heart sink. Let me know where in the world you're watching from. And if you enjoy true stories like this, take 3 seconds to subscribe to my channel. My Uncle Walter had always been a quiet man. He never married, had no children, and mostly kept to himself in that old house at the edge of town. But when I was a little girl, I'd visit him during the summers while my parents worked double shifts. He wasn't the type to spoil you with toys or candy, but he taught me how to fix things around the house, how to track birds by their calls, and how to find comfort in silence. Over the years, we drifted apart. Life got busy, I got married, Uncle Walter got older, but somehow, despite all the distance, he still remembered me. When the lawyer handed me the envelope and told me Uncle Walter had left everything to me, I was stunned. His words in the will were simple. Claire always saw the value in quiet things. She'll know what to do. That line echoed in my head as I walked, holding the envelope close. It wasn't just about the money. It felt like a second chance, like someone out there still believed in me. I began imagining things. Maybe I could fix the leaky ceiling in our bedroom, replace the old washing machine that rattled like it was haunted. Maybe I could pay off the car loan and surprise Ryan with a short trip to the coast, just the two of us. No stress, no bills, no cold silences. We needed it. I needed it. I kept thinking, maybe this was our turning point. Maybe the distance between us could finally shrink. But everything changed when I reached the door. Ryan and I hadn't always been this distant. When we first met, he was spontaneous, passionate, the kind of man who could light up a room just by walking into it. He had dreams, big ones. He wanted to open his own mechanics shop, leave the 9-to-5 grind, and build something of his own. And I loved that about him. His ambition, his fire. It made me feel like the world wasn't so heavy when he was around. But as the years passed, that fire dimmed. His job wore him down. Bills piled up. My hours at the library stretched longer, and our conversations grew shorter. We stopped laughing at dinner. We stopped looking at each other when we talked. At first, I thought it was just stress, just life. Everyone went through rough patches, right? But deep down, I knew better. Something had shifted. His eyes no longer searched for mine. He spent more time on his phone, more nights working late, and when I asked how he was, his answer was always the same. I'm fine. Then there was Olivia, his cousin. She'd always hovered on the edges of our life, pretty, outspoken, ambitious in a way that felt aggressive. She called Ryan Rye and always seemed to have a new, amazing idea that needed funding. A boutique, a cosmetics brand, an online course. None of them lasted more than 6 months. I never disliked her, but I never fully trusted her either. There was something too polished, too performative about the way she smiled, like she was always working an angle. And Ryan? He always defended her, said she was just trying to make it. That family should stick together. Maybe that's why I dismissed the tension I felt when they were in the same room. The way she touched his arm a little too long when laughing. The way his expression softened when she asked for help. I told myself it was nothing. Just my imagination. But on the day I came home with the inheritance papers in my bag and hope in my chest, all those old doubts came roaring back, louder, clearer, undeniable. Because what I heard through that door? It wasn't nothing. The apartment door was slightly ajar. Not enough to push open, just enough to let voices spill through the gap like a leak from a cracked pipe. I was about to call out when I heard Ryan's voice, low and serious. She'll hand it over. I know her. She's too soft to say no. I froze. My hand gripped the doorknob. My heart started pounding. Then Olivia's voice chimed in, casual, amused. She won't even question it. Just say it's for something you both need. A joint investment, a shop, maybe even a house upgrade. She'll want to help. She always does. They were talking about me, about the money. The blood drained from my face. Ryan continued. It just doesn't make sense. Why would her uncle leave it all to her? I mean, yeah, she used to visit him, but still, $35,000? You'd think he'd have left it to someone who could actually do something smart with it. Olivia laughed softly. Well, now you can. Technically, you're her husband. What's hers is yours, right? What's hers is yours. That line burned in my ears like acid, as if everything I had, everything someone gave me out of love, was up for grabs. As if I didn't even matter in the equation. I stepped back from the door, heart racing, breath shallow. I wanted to scream, to burst in, to throw the papers in Ryan's face and ask him who he thought I was. But I didn't. Instead, I stood there and listened. She's been tired lately, Olivia said. Just sell it to her as a vacation plan, something romantic. She'll be so touched she won't question it. Ryan chuckled. That's the plan. Play it sweet, plant the idea, and let her come up with it herself. Then it won't even feel like I asked. They had a strategy. They were rehearsing a manipulation. I felt cold, hollow. This wasn't just about money. This was about how little they thought of me, about how replaceable my trust was to them. I backed away from the door, clutching my purse tighter, the weight of the envelope inside suddenly heavier than ever. That was the moment everything shifted. Not when I got the inheritance, not when Uncle Walter's lawyer said my name, not even when I imagined a fresh start. It was right there, outside my own home, where the line between before and after was drawn. I stood there, my mind spinning, my heart in knots. I didn't know how long I stood outside that door, listening to their voices fade as they carried on with their plans. Every part of me wanted to rush in, confront them, scream at Ryan, at Olivia, but I knew I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I quietly slipped down the hall and into the kitchen, trying to steady my breath. I sat down, staring at the walls that had witnessed so many good memories. How had it all come to this? How had I missed it? The lies were right in front of me, and yet I hadn't seen them. I took a deep breath and picked up the envelope. The weight of the $35,000 felt different now. It wasn't just money. It was the truth. It was my next move. Ryan would be home soon. I needed to act normal. I needed him to believe everything was fine, to keep playing my part until I was ready to make my move. I forced myself to focus, pushing away the image of him and Olivia, laughing at how easy it would be to manipulate me. I couldn't let them see how much this hurt. I couldn't let them know how much I'd been fooled. I decided I would say nothing. Not yet. I'd give them one more night, a night where they'd think everything was still the same, a night where they'd think I hadn't heard a thing. But deep down, I was already making my plan. I had to be strategic. This wasn't just about protecting the inheritance anymore. It was about protecting myself. My trust had been shattered, and I wasn't going to let them take everything from me. I walked into the living room as Ryan came through the door. He looked at me, that same tired smile on his face, and asked how my day had gone. I smiled back, forcing the words out. Good, just a little busy. Yeah, I can tell, he said, tossing his keys on the table. You seem distracted? Got something on your mind? I shook my head. No, nothing, really. I kept my voice steady, despite the storm raging inside me. I was thinking maybe we could take a weekend trip soon, just the two of us. I think we need it. Ryan raised an eyebrow, surprised. Yeah? You're really in the mood for a trip? I nodded. Yeah, we could use a break. I'll look into some places. As I spoke, I could feel the tension rising. He was looking at me now, his expression changing, sensing something was different. But I kept my voice calm, my face neutral. What he didn't know was that I was already getting things in motion. I wouldn't give him the chance to take what was mine. I couldn't let Olivia use him. I couldn't let him use me. I excused myself to the bedroom after a few minutes, pretending I needed rest. But in reality, I was already making plans. I would take the money, get a separate account, and make sure they could never touch it. I wasn't going to wait any longer. I couldn't. The next evening, things took a turn. I knew it was coming. I could feel it in the air. Ryan had been acting strange all day, quieter than usual. It was like he was waiting for something, waiting for me to finally give in. We sat down for dinner, and the conversation was tense. Ryan kept glancing at me, as if trying to gauge my reaction. I didn't say much at first, just picked at my food, pretending everything was fine. Then, out of nowhere, he brought it up. So, about the inheritance? My stomach dropped. My heart raced, but I kept my voice steady. What about it? Ryan shifted in his seat, his eyes narrowing. Well, I've been thinking. Maybe we should, do something with it. Invest it, maybe. Olivia's been talking about this idea for a shop, and honestly, it could be really good for all of us. I looked up at him, my eyes cold. You want me to give Olivia my inheritance? Ryan shrugged, trying to sound casual. It's not just for her, Claire. It's for the family, for us. We could all benefit from it. I know we've been struggling a bit. This could really help us get ahead. I leaned back in my chair, my voice low but firm. This money is mine. It's not for a shop or for some half-baked idea from Olivia. Ryan's face hardened. You're being selfish. I felt a flicker of anger rise inside me. Selfish? Was he really going to say that? After everything? After what I had just overheard? You're the one who's selfish, I snapped. You and Olivia. You've been planning this behind my back. I heard everything. Ryan froze, his face draining of color. He looked at me, wide-eyed. What do you mean you heard everything? I stood up, the chair scraping against the floor as I did. I heard you both talking, planning how to take my money, pretending like you were doing this for me, for us. But it was never about that, was it? Ryan opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Olivia's name hung in the air like a threat. You've been using me, using my trust, I continued, my voice shaking with emotion, and I won't let you do it anymore. Ryan's face twisted with frustration. You don't understand, Claire. This is for the future, for our future. If we don't take the opportunity now, we'll regret it. You'll see. It's what's best for everyone. I shook my head, my chest tightening with a mixture of anger and sadness. No, Ryan. What's best for me is to keep this money for myself, to rebuild my life, my future, without you and Olivia. He stood up, his fists clenched. You're being unreasonable. Don't you see what we could do with it? I see exactly what you want to do with it, I replied coldly, and I'm not going to let you. The silence between us felt thick. The words were out there, hanging between us like a chasm we could never cross. Ryan stared at me for a long moment, his expression full of disbelief. But I wasn't going to back down. I couldn't. This wasn't just about money. This was about my dignity, my future. You can't just take it, Claire, he muttered, his voice breaking. You can't just keep it all to yourself? I already have, I said, my voice steady, my resolve solidifying. And I will. I turned and walked away, heading for the bedroom. I could hear him calling my name behind me, but I didn't turn around. I didn't need to hear anything else. The argument with Ryan left a bitter taste in my mouth, but it also sparked something inside me. Something stronger than the shock, something more resolute than the anger. It was the feeling of finally realizing how much I had been living in the shadow of others' expectations, of Ryan's, Olivia's, even my own family's. But that night, after Ryan had stormed off to the couch in the living room, leaving me in silence, I knew what I had to do. I couldn't stay in this marriage, not when it was built on manipulation, lies, and deceit. The inheritance wasn't just money anymore. It was my chance to take control of my life, to do something for me. I had already started the process in my mind the moment I overheard their conversation. I'd transfer the money to a new account, one Ryan didn't know about. I would be cautious, take it step by step. I wasn't going to make a scene. I wasn't going to let him see me panic. But I had a plan. The first thing I did was take the inheritance documents and store them safely in my drawer. Then I started looking for a lawyer. I didn't want a long, drawn-out process. I wanted this to be swift, efficient. I pulled out my phone and started searching for divorce lawyers, reading reviews, trying to figure out which one would understand the urgency, the quiet pain I felt, the need for discretion. I couldn't trust anyone who knew Ryan, who knew Olivia. The last thing I needed was them finding out before I was ready. I couldn't stay in that house another day. I couldn't let Ryan have another chance to convince me that his lies were for the greater good. I needed to leave. The next morning I went to work, but my mind was elsewhere. I couldn't stop thinking about how I would get out. I needed a safe place, a new home, even if it meant starting from scratch. The thought of packing up everything in that apartment made my stomach turn, but I couldn't stay. When I returned home that night, Ryan was already there, sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone. I could tell he was trying to make things seem normal, trying to act like nothing had happened. He was too proud to admit defeat, too ashamed to face the truth. I walked into the kitchen, grabbed a glass of water, and sat at the table. He didn't say anything. Neither did I. The silence between us stretched longer than it ever had before. That night, I lay in bed wide awake, staring at the ceiling. I kept hearing Ryan's voice echoing in my head. "You're being selfish." But the more I thought about it, the more I realized he was wrong. I wasn't selfish for wanting to keep what was mine. I wasn't selfish for wanting to build a future on my own terms. I had given him enough chances, given him enough of myself, and he had betrayed me. The next morning, I made the call. A moving truck. I started packing in secret, doing it quietly while Ryan was out of the house. I only took the essentials at first: clothes, a few photos, my most important documents. I wasn't going to wait any longer. I couldn't. The moving truck arrived a week later, just as I had planned. I had everything packed, every corner of my life carefully folded into boxes: memories, clothes, photographs, things that had once felt important, but now only weighed me down. I could already feel the weight lifting from my shoulders. This was the right decision. I knew it in my bones. I didn't tell Ryan. I didn't owe him an explanation. I had told myself that I would leave without drama, without confrontation, and that's exactly what I did. I simply packed up, took the essentials, and walked out the door. As the truck pulled away from the apartment, I glanced back one last time. The apartment, the place that had once been a home, felt like a distant memory now. It was no longer a safe place. It was just four walls and a bunch of broken dreams. I didn't know where I was going at first. I just knew I couldn't stay in that town, not where I'd shared everything with Ryan, not where his lies and betrayal had soaked into every crevice of my life. I drove for hours, just me and the open road, until I finally found a little town tucked away in the hills, a place I didn't know, a place no one would know me. I rented a small apartment there, a tiny one-bedroom unit in a quiet building. It wasn't much, but it was mine. It was my space to breathe, to think, and to rebuild. I couldn't afford to waste any more time. I needed to focus. I had the inheritance money, but I couldn't just let it sit there. I had to make sure it worked for me, not for someone else's dreams. The first few weeks were hard. I didn't know anyone in this new town, and I spent most of my time working. But slowly, I started finding my rhythm again. I could breathe without fear, without the constant anxiety of wondering what Ryan was planning next, wondering if Olivia had whispered some new idea to him. Every day, I reminded myself that I had control now. I could make my own decisions. I could plan my future without being manipulated. The silence in my new apartment felt different than the silence in the old one. It wasn't cold. It wasn't lonely. It was peaceful. I found a small cafe down the street from my apartment. The owner, a woman named Margaret, was kind and welcoming. She'd lived in the town all her life, and she didn't ask me about my past. It was a relief. I could just exist there, without anyone trying to pry or judge. In the evenings, I would walk through the town, the cool air filling my lungs, feeling more alive than I had in years. It was like I had been holding my breath for so long, and now, finally, I could exhale. I started looking into small businesses, wondering if I could do something on my own, create something that was mine. Maybe I could open a small bookstore, something cozy and quiet, like my uncle's old house had been. I didn't know yet, but I felt the spark of possibility. One afternoon, while I was at the cafe, Margaret asked me what I wanted for my future. The question caught me off guard, but as I sat there, I realized that for the first time in a long while, I had an answer. "I want to build something," I said. "Something for me. Something that's just mine." Margaret smiled. "I think you will." And for the first time, I believed her. Weeks turned into months, and my life began to take shape in ways I hadn't imagined. The town, with its quiet streets and familiar faces, had become home. It was peaceful here, something I had longed for but never truly known. I had no more fears about secrets being kept from me. No more wondering if Ryan was lying or manipulating. It was just me. And for the first time, I was enough. One afternoon, as I walked through the small park near my apartment, I received an unexpected call. It was from Ryan. He hadn't reached out since I left, and to be honest, I wasn't sure what to expect. "Claire?" His voice cracked, sounding different than it ever had before. "I've been thinking about everything, about how things ended. I've made a lot of mistakes. I know I don't deserve it, but I need to apologize. I never meant for things to go this far." I paused, letting the words hang in the air for a moment. I'd waited for this apology. I'd wanted it for so long. But now that it was here, I felt no relief, no joy, only an overwhelming sense of finality. "I don't need your apology, Ryan," I said, my voice steady, without bitterness. "I've forgiven you, but forgiveness doesn't mean I'll forget. I've moved on." There was silence on the other end of the line. I imagined him standing there, trying to find the words, but I wasn't going to let him use me again. Not anymore. "I've built something new, Ryan. I've found peace. And that's all I need." I hung up before he could say anything else. The moment the phone call ended, I felt the last of the weight I had been carrying slip off my shoulders. I didn't need his approval. I didn't need his validation. I had everything I needed within myself now. Over the next few months, I started to build the life I had always dreamed of. I saved the inheritance money and used it wisely. I found a little space in town and opened a small bookstore, just like I had always wanted. It wasn't big or flashy, but it was mine. Every book on the shelves, every corner of the shop, felt like a piece of me. And for the first time in years, I felt proud. Ryan and Olivia never reached out again, and I was glad. I didn't need them in my life anymore. I was done with the lies, the manipulation, the constant weight of someone else's plans. I had my own plans now. And as I sat in my bookstore one evening, sipping coffee and reading through a new order of books, I realized something. This was the life I was meant to live. A life of independence, peace, and quiet strength. I wasn't the woman who had been lied to. I wasn't the woman who had been betrayed. I was Claire. I had survived. I had rebuilt. And most importantly, I had found happiness again. On my own terms.